Practice Test 1. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all of your answers on the test pages. Section 1. You will hear a man asking for information about driving lessons over the phone. First, you have time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good afternoon, ProDrive Driving School. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Ken Palmer. I have a driving test in May, so I was wondering if I could book some driving lessons.
Most certainly. Are you going to sit the practical driving test?
Section 1.
Good afternoon, ProDrive Driving School. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Ken Palmer. I have a driving test in May, so I was wondering if I could book some driving lessons.
Most certainly. Are you going to sit the practical driving test?
Yes, I have already passed the written tests, so I know all of the road rules. I just don't feel that confident behind the wheel.
I can completely understand. Most of the people who book lessons are in the same situation as you. Our driving instructors will help develop your driving skills so that you can pass the driving test.
Okay, that's great. How many lessons do you think I'll need?
Most people who need preparation for the practical driving test book 4 90-minute lessons.
That's fine. What lesson times do you have available?
Well, do you want to have your lessons in the mornings, afternoons, or evenings?
In the evenings, please. I work during the day.
Okay, so it is Monday, April 5th today, and you mentioned that your practical test is in May. So, would you like to have 1 lesson a week during the month of April?
Yes, please. I think that would work out well.
Okay, well, our instructor, Brian Tang, is available on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Does that time suit you?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, I just need to get some details from you. Could you please tell me your whole name?
Sure. It's Kenneth Palmer, but I go by Ken.
Thank you. And what is your phone number, Ken?
It's 02 9876 5662.
Do you have a work phone number?
No, I just use my mobile number.
Okay. Now, Brian will pick you up for each lesson, so can I please get your address?
It's Unit 4, 39 Dandelion Street, North Sydney.
Sorry, could you please spell that for me?
Sure, it's DANDELION.
Thank you. And I also need to get your email address.
It's kenpalmer1990 at xmail.com.
kenpalmer1990 at xmail.com. Thank you, Ken. Now, you said that you have passed our written test, but I just need to confirm exactly what kind of driver's license you currently hold.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
I've got a P1 license at the moment.
Is that a New South Wales license?
Yes, it is.
Okay, please make sure that you have your license with you at all times when you have your driving lessons with Brian.
I will do. So, how much does each lesson cost?
The cost for one 90-minute lesson is $75.
That's quite expensive.
But this is for a single lesson. Because you want to book 4 lessons, the total cost will be $260. That's $65 a lesson. Also, if you do want to book extra lessons, they will be $60 each.
Okay, that's not bad. But do I have all 4 lessons at once?
No, you don't need to pay the total amount right away. You can also pay $80 before the first lesson and then $60 before each of the other 3 lessons.
Fine. How can I pay?
We will send you a confirmation form to your email address. You will need to complete the form and email it back to me or drop it into our office. The payment options are listed on the confirmation form, but you can pay by cash or credit card.
Cash is easier for me. So can I give my payment to the instructor?
Yes, Brian can accept your payments and he will give you a receipt.
Okay, that all sounds great.
Excellent. So Brian will pick you up from 39 Dandelion Street, North Sydney on Tuesday, April the 6th at 5:30.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting him.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a presenter giving information about a tourist destination. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 11 to 15.
Good morning, passengers. Pretty soon we will be landing in sunny Cairns, the gateway to Queensland's tropical north. With its fantastic cafes, busy markets and glorious beaches, Cairns is the ideal base to explore the nearby Great Barrier Reef, Port Douglas and the Daintree Rainforest, which was named after the famous Australian geologist and photographer Richard Daintree. The first stop for most visitors to Cairns is the Cairns Esplanade. Here you'll find waterfront boardwalks and a children's water park and a swimming lagoon. The popular swimming lagoon is near the downtown area and is at the southern end of the Cairns Esplanade. So after you've had a swim, dry off and eat at one of the 100 restaurants that Cairns has to offer. Seafood, Chinese, Thai, Japanese, Italian, Indian, pizza and more. There is a mouth-watering food for every palate. And be sure to order a coconut latte from one of the many funky cafes on Grafton and Spence Streets. After a coffee and a bite, check out the Cairns Central Shopping Centre to the west. And at 4:30, the Cairns night market's open, so the fun never stops. If you don't have anywhere to stay yet, Cairns has an array of accommodation for everyone, including world-class hotels, serviced apartments, stunning resorts, and backpacker hostels. You simply can't come to Cairns without visiting the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral reef system. So after a good night's sleep, wander down to the Reef Fleet Terminal for a day trip to the stunning Barrier Reef. Cairns is the main gateway to the Great Barrier Reef, and you can find trips any day of the year. And it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner snorkeler or an advanced diver, there is a trip for everyone. You don't even have to be able to swim, you might even want to go island hopping on some of the reef's pristine islands. The 45-minute high-speed ferry trip to the magnificent Fitzroy Island is a popular choice.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
If a beach holiday is what you are after, then the popular northern beaches, Trinity Beach and Palm Cove, are just 20-minute drive north of the city. Or if you don't mind going a little further, Port Douglas and the beautiful 4 Mile Beach are only 70 kilometres north of Cairns. And if you want adrenaline, Cairns is a thrill-seeker's paradise. There is whitewater rafting on Tully River, AJ Hackett's bungee jumping and skydiving tours, which depart from near Cairns, Esplanade, or Chinaman Creek. The ancient rainforests that surround Cairns have been guarded by the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for thousands of years. Take a short drive out of Cairns to experience Jepakai Cultural Park and find out more about the fascinating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and how they mastered living in this amazing land. Stay until after dark to witness the magical Nightfire ceremony. Finally, no trip to Cairns would be complete without exploring the World Heritage listed Daintree Rainforest. Walk at mid-level through the rainforest, on the aerial walkway, or be your own explorer on a self-guided tour. You can also take a cruise along the Daintree River to see some of far north Queensland's famous locals, the saltwater crocodiles. So welcome again to our tropical paradise, and I'm sure you will have an unforgettable time.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between two university students about a presentation they have to give. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 21 to 25. Hi Tim, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How about you?
I'm well too. I'm glad we finally have some time to spend together to work on our presentation.
Me too. I read the article on our topic that Professor Archibald suggested.
The impact of dams on communities and the environment? Yeah, I read that too. So I think we should decide who is going to cover what during the presentation.
Yeah, I agree. I think one way we could do this is divide the presentation between the impact of dams upstream and the impact of dams downstream.
Sure. I found the section in the article about the impact of dams downstream more interesting, so I would love to talk about that, if that's okay with you.
Sure, I don't mind what I talk about, but I guess talking for 5 minutes each seems like a pretty long time.
Yeah, I know it seems pretty long, but I think we have plenty to talk about for the whole 10 minutes.
And then we have questions and answers?
Yes, but those should be easier. Just looking at the article, I can cover riverline and coastal erosion, the effects of flood-dependent ecology, and the potential for disaster.
I'm not sure that I have as much to talk about. There is really just the stress that dams place on river ecosystems and the sedimentation of reservoirs.
That's true. So how about talking about the effects of dams upon humans as well?
Okay, I can mention how people have been displaced and lost access to food and water sources. Do you remember which day Professor Archibald said we have to do our presentation?
Next Thursday. Unfortunately, that's also my busiest day. I've got a lecture in the morning and one at night. It's going to be quite a day. Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Yeah, especially the presentation. Have you got any special tips for doing presentations?
Well, I'm going to make cue cards.
What? Are we allowed to do that?
Sure. Professor Archibald said he encourages that. It means you can better engage the audience.
Okay, but I don't think I'll use cue cards. I like to follow the keywords on the presentation slides as I go. I usually find I can remember all the important points. Plus, I always worry that I will drop cue cards or mix up the order.
But what if you miss something?
I don't think I will. As long as I follow the slides, I'll be fine.
Well, that's up to you. And I guess it's not too different from using cue cards.
I won't have too many slides. Maybe 15? So who's going to start?
How about we both introduce ourselves and our topic to the audience, and then you talk about the impact of dams on rivers upstream?
I'm happy with that. So will you then talk about the impact of dams downstream?
Yes. And you can finish off the presentation by talking about the effects of dams on humans.
That sounds like a good plan. And then we have the question and answer section after our 10-minute presentation.
Yes, and that'll take 5 minutes, won't it?
That's right. So maybe a good way to see how much we already remember is to test each other now.
I like that idea. I've got a good question for you about the potential for disaster.
Go ahead.
When did the Ban Chao Reservoir Dam flood happen?
I think I know the answer. Was it in 1975?
Wasn't it in 1974? Let's check.
Maybe it was 1976.
Here's the answer, and you were right the first time. So it sounds like you have read the article well.
I think I have. Anyhow, I'll ask you a few questions, and then I guess we better start making our slides.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecture about gladiator games. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 31 to 33.
Welcome to today's lecture, the third lecture in the series of lectures on ancient Rome. Last time I spoke about the establishment of the Roman Republic in 509 BC. In this lecture, I'm going to examine the role of gladiator games in ancient Rome. Today, the idea of combatants fighting to the death in front of thousands of spectators is unthinkable. However, during the staging of Roman gladiator games, this is exactly what happened, and their morality was rarely questioned. Indeed, for the Romans, the arena was an institution. So, let's find out more about the gladiators and why they were so important in ancient Rome. According to the myth, Rome was founded on 21 April 753 BC. However, it wasn't until nearly 500 years later when the first known gladiator bout in Rome took place in 264 BC. It was staged in honour of a deceased aristocrat, Junius Brutus Pera. And for the next 100 years, gladiator bouts continued to be rather private affairs at Roman funerals of the wealthy. Forcing slaves to fight to the death was often a term of a will. These early gladiator bouts recognised the importance of the deceased person and served as means of impressing other elite members of society.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 40.
It wasn't until the death of the popular general Titus Quinticus Flaminius that gladiator bouts were staged in front of audiences of the greater public. So from 150 BC, the purpose of gladiator games changed to please thousands of spectators, the masses and the aristocrats, while gaining political prestige. So amphitheatres were built to hold gladiator contests. As a public spectacle, gladiator games were red-letter days throughout the Roman Empire. The gladiators were paraded before the contests. Wild animals, such as bears, rhinos, tigers and elephants, were often displayed too. These animals were sometimes used to execute prisoners too. As for the gladiators themselves, most were slaves. Owners viewed gladiators as expensive investors, so their fighters were highly trained, well fed, and they also received the best medical attention of the time. What may come to surprise some of you is that some gladiators weren't slaves at all. Some men willingly volunteered to take part in gladiator games. Such men were likely motivated by the financial incentives of volunteering as a gladiator. Gladiators used a variety of different fighting styles. The Murmillo used a large shield, while the Thraex and Hoplomachus had smaller shields. There was also a net fighter, and even Equites, who entered the arena on horseback. On occasion, female gladiatresses also fought, but these contests were banned by the Emperor Septimius Severus in 200 AD. A successful gladiator could gain his own freedom or become a trainer or a bodyguard. A well-known aspect of the gladiator games is that of the spectators making thumbs up or thumbs down to indicate if a defeated gladiator should be condemned to death. Indeed, mosaics from around the Roman Empire depict this moment, but some historians believe that a closed fist with a wraparound thumb was used instead of the thumbs down gesture. For nearly 700 years, gladiator games were an important part of the Roman world. But on January 1st, 404 AD, a monk, Saint Telemachus, ran into the middle of an arena during a gladiator bout and tried to physically stop the fighting. However, the spectators were so engaged that they stoned him to death. At this time, Christianity had become the official religion of the empire, so the emperor of the day, Honorius, banned the gladiator games from that day forward, and they never resumed.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.